The chamber was silent. A silence not of peace but of wounds left unhealed. Across the hollowed dome of Earth's unified council, the last message of humanity was being prepared. Words that would cross stars, echo through broken treaties, and test the patience of a species that had begged too long for peace. Commander Elias stood before the broadcasting platform, his reflection caught in the polished steel. He looked older than his years, lines carved deep across his face, not by time but by burden. He had worn the uniform of a soldier, then the suit of a diplomat, and now he bore only the mantle of witness, the one chosen to speak Earth's final warning to the galaxy. Beside him stood Mira, the last voice of diplomacy. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the datapad containing their message. Where Elias's voice would thunder, Mira's words would cut like glass. They had both argued against this moment for years, standing in halls filled with alien emissaries, pleading for mercy, for understanding, for a fragile web of peace, and each time humanity's voice had been silenced by the weight of galactic arrogance. Now, there was no more silence to give. "Transmission ready," the technician whispered, his voice breaking the hush. His eyes glistened, though he tried to keep them steady. Everyone in the chamber knew this message was not just another speech, it was the threshold. Once spoken, there would be no return. Elias placed a hand on Mira's shoulder, steadying her. She looked at him, her eyes deep wells of grief, yet also carrying a fire that had never died. "We should have never reached this day," she whispered. "No," Elias answered, his voice heavy but unwavering. "But it is here, and the stars will remember how we faced it." The signal opened. Across the cold vastness of space, hundreds of listening posts, orbital stations, and alien homeworlds would soon receive Earth's broadcast. 1,000 species would pause. Some would laugh, as they always had. Some would dismiss it, as they always had. But this time, something different waited in humanity's voice. Mira stepped forward first. She spoke softly, yet her words carried like steel in the night. "To the assembled powers of the Orion Accord, to the Dominion of Keth, to the syndicates of Avar, and to every world that chose silence while humanity bled, we address you one last time. For a century, Earth has sought dialogue. We offered treaties. We offered compromise. We endured insult, blockade, and invasion. Still, we asked for peace." She paused, her hands tightening around the datapad. Elias could see the shadow of all the broken promises in her eyes. "You answered not with respect but with contempt. You carved into our colonies. You silenced our children's futures with your greed. You thought humanity small, fragile, a flame easy to smother. And yet here we stand, scarred, but unbroken." Elias stepped forward, his voice resonant, carrying the weight of generations. "This is humanity's final warning. Do not mistake our patience for weakness again. We sought peace because we understood the cost of war. But you have taken peace from us piece by piece until nothing remains. You have left us with only one path." The chamber seemed to hold its breath. The technicians, the guards, the observers. They all leaned forward as if the very air trembled with what was coming. "From this day, we will no longer beg," Elias declared. "We will no longer yield. If war is what you force upon us, then war you shall have. And understand this. Humanity does not fight to conquer nor to enslave. Humanity fights to endure. We fight for the right of every child on Earth to see the sun rise without chains. We fight for the memory of those who dreamed of peace, now silenced by your arrogance. And when we fight," his voice rose sharp as thunder rolling over mountains, "we fight with a fury that the stars themselves will remember." Mira's voice returned, quiet but piercing, like a blade sliding between armor. "You wanted to test Earth. You wanted to see how far patience could bend before it broke. Now you will see what awakens when it shatters. We asked for peace. You gave us ashes. What rises from those ashes will not be what you expect. It will be humanity united, burning brighter than any star, and we will not be stopped." The transmission ended. Silence fell again, but it was no longer the silence of wounds. It was the silence before a storm. Commander Elias lowered his gaze, exhaling a breath that seemed to carry centuries of sorrow. "It is done," he murmured. Mira turned to him, her voice trembling yet firm. "Then may the galaxy remember they were warned." And so Earth's last message traveled into the void. a beacon of fury and resilience. Across alien skies where humanity's pleas had once been mocked, the final warning now echoed. Peace has failed. Prepare for humanity's fury. Long before the final warning was spoken, humanity had believed the stars held promise. Children in classrooms once painted pictures of alien friends with many arms, many eyes, and many dreams. Great poets of Earth wrote verses about unity across the galaxy. The first contact had seemed like the dawning of that dream. But dreams often break hardest when they are nearest to being real. The Keth Dominion had been the first to extend its hand, or so it appeared. They arrived in massive ships that blotted out the skies of Mars, their envoys cloaked in silver robes, voices low and sweet. They promised technology, wisdom, and a place in the accord of civilized worlds. Humanity listened with wide-eyed wonder, eager to belong. Yet within decades it became clear the hand offered was not to lift Earth upward, but to hold it down. The technology shared was laced with dependence, systems that could only be repaired with Keth approval, energy sources locked by codes only the Dominion controlled. Colonies on the edge of Sol space found themselves under protection that felt more like occupation. Still, humanity endured. Diplomats argued, treaties were signed, and Earth bent rather than broke. Then came the syndicates of Avar. Traders, they called themselves masters of exchange. They smiled as they signed agreements for mutual prosperity. Yet the moment Earth opened its markets, floods of alien goods drowned human industry. Millions lost their work, their homes, their dignity. Entire regions of Earth were left in silence as factories closed and cities emptied. The Avar grew fat on cheap labor from desperate humans, and still, Earth pleaded for fairness instead of fighting back. Commander Elias remembered those years vividly. He had been a young officer, patrolling refugee routes between shattered colonies. He remembered faces of mothers holding children wrapped in thin blankets, faces of fathers who no longer had words to comfort. They had looked at him not as a soldier, but as a question. Why do they do this to us? Why do we still believe peace is possible? The heaviest blow, however, had come from those who simply stood by. The Orion Accord, a vast council of dozens of alien civilizations, had listened as humanity begged for intervention. They heard reports of blockades, economic strangulation, and even raids against Earth's frontier worlds. Their response was always the same. Your grievances are noted. The council will deliberate. Deliberation stretched into years. And in those years, human lives were ground into dust. Mira had stood in those chambers herself, her voice steady, though her heart broke each time her words dissolved into bureaucratic silence. She remembered one session most of all. A tall, glass-skinned envoy from the council had leaned forward, shimmering in the chamber's light, and said with casual indifference, "Perhaps humanity's destiny is not to stand as equals, but to serve as necessary labor for greater civilizations. Consider it a contribution to galactic stability." She had wanted to scream then, to shatter the false civility of that hall, but instead she had done what humans always did, swallowed her anger and searched for another path toward peace. That night, alone in her quarters, she wept into her hands. She wept not only for Earth, but for her own failure to shield it. And yet, even in betrayal, humanity still dreamed. Scientists on Earth kept building ships even when parts were withheld. Farmers on distant colonies kept planting crops even as markets collapsed. Teachers kept teaching children about hope, even when the stars seemed cruel. Humanity did not stop. Humanity endured, but endurance has limits. The breaking point came at Vega Station. It had been Earth's proud symbol of cooperation, a trade hub meant to unite human and alien merchants under one roof. One night, syndicate raiders swept through the station, looting cargo, killing civilians, and branding it unfortunate business. Elias had arrived with his fleet too late. He had walked the halls of Vega Station and seen bodies lined against the walls, children's toys floating weightless in zero gravity, screens still glowing with unfulfilled calls for help. He had sworn then and there that if peace could not protect even a child's laughter, then peace was no longer peace, it was surrender. From that day, humanity's patience began to harden into something else, into something the galaxy had never seen in full measure. Mira often said afterward, We begged them with words, we pleaded with open hands, and they answered with chains. If they will not hear our songs, they will hear our silence, and after silence, they will hear our roar. The galaxy thought humanity small, fragile, a firefly in the vast dark. But they had forgotten what happens when a firefly's light is cornered too long. It begins to burn. The message had gone out. Across Earth, across the colonies, across every fragment of humanity scattered among the stars, people listened to the final warning. For some it stirred pride, for others fear, but for all it was a call that could no longer be ignored. No one had ever truly wanted this war. That truth was carved into every face in the command centers, every hand trembling as weapons long kept idle were now awakened. Humanity had not built for conquest. Humanity had built for survival, and survival demanded preparation. Commander Elias stood within the orbital yards above Luna, watching as ships came alive under the harsh lights. Skeletons of steel grew into vessels with names already whispered in reverence. Resolve, Dawnfire, Ironheart. Some were new, their hulls gleaming with freshly forged alloys. Others were old ships once stripped for parts, now reassembled by hands that refused to let them fade. Even freighters were being converted. Cargo bays emptied to make room for weapons, engines reinforced for speed. It was not elegance the galaxy would face. It was determination hammered into steel. Below, Earth itself was transforming. Cities that once hummed with commerce now rang with industry. Factories that had been silenced by syndicate manipulation roared back to life, their smokestacks crowned with fire once more. Scientists who had been denied alien schematics turned inward, reinventing, rediscovering, and innovating with fury born of necessity. We always asked permission, one engineer muttered, sparks flying from her workbench. No more. If they withhold their secrets, we'll make our own and better. Mira traveled among these places, no longer just a diplomat, but a voice of encouragement. She stood in assembly halls where welders gathered, in greenhouses where farmers grew crops to feed soldiers, in schools where children practiced drills. Everywhere she went, she carried a single message. We did not choose this war, but we will choose how we fight it. She saw the quiet courage of ordinary people, an old man in a wheelchair weaving camouflage nets, a young mother programming navigation software while rocking her infant, a group of students painting the sides of ships with words of defiance, for Vega, for Earth, for the future. Elias, meanwhile, forged soldiers. He drilled them not with songs of vengeance, but with reminders of what they protected. You are not here to conquer, he told them, his voice carrying across parade grounds and training halls. You are here so that no child grows up in chains. You are here so that humanity has a tomorrow. Yet even as he spoke, he carried the weight of what was to come. He had fought before, small battles, skirmishes where losses were measured in dozens. He knew this war would not be so kind. He knew that when the storm broke, the galaxy would learn humanity's fury, but humanity itself would bleed. Night after night, he found himself staring out at the stars, whispering to the memory of Vega Station, to the faces he could not forget. If we must fight, let it be for you. Let it be for something that matters, and the preparations grew. On Mars, deep caverns became vaults of weapons, old and new. On Titan, shipyards stretched across frozen plains. On the asteroid belts, hidden factories hummed with secret labor, their workers swearing oaths of silence. Across the colonies, humanity was knitting together a war machine, not of domination but of survival. Still, doubt lingered. Some asked if humanity could truly stand against empires that spanned hundreds of worlds. Mira answered them with simple words. Do not think of the size of their fleets. Think of the size of our spirit. The galaxy has never seen all of humanity united. It will. And there was unity. Nations that had once quarreled on Earth set aside disputes. Old wounds seemed small now compared to the threat from the stars. For the first time in history, humanity truly stood as one people. The storm gathered not only in steel and fire, but in hearts. Elias felt it when he walked the training lines, seeing recruits who had once been merchants, miners, scholars. He felt it when he read letters from families sending their sons and daughters with blessings, not curses. He felt it when he heard the anthem of Earth echo across stations and colonies, sung not in triumph, but in solemn promise. The galaxy believed humanity had been broken. They would soon learn humanity had only been tempered. The storm was not yet unleashed, but it was coming, and when it came, it would sweep the stars. The galaxy had laughed at Earth's warning. In the gilded halls of the Orion Accord, envoys exchanged amused whispers. The Keth Dominion scoffed, calling humanity's threat the bark of a wounded animal. The syndicates of Avar dismissed it as a merchant's bluff. Not one believed that the small blue world on the edge of the spiral arm could truly shake the order of the stars. So when the first strike came, it was not only a battle, it was a revelation. The Keth Dominion had dispatched a fleet to remind Earth of its place. 20 warships, each larger than a human city, descended upon the outer colonies. Their commander sent a broadcast in tones dripping with disdain. "Lay down your arms. Humanity will surrender peacefully, or we will erase you." Commander Elias heard that message aboard the Resolve, his flagship. His crew sat tense, eyes fixed on him. He did not pace. He did not shout. He simply stood at the center of the command deck, voice calm as a blade. "Transmit reply," he said. His officers opened the channel. Elias's words were measured, steady, unshaken. "You mistake us still. Humanity does not surrender. Humanity endures." The battle began. The Keth ships advanced in perfect formation, confident in their superior firepower. But what they did not expect was humanity's greatest weapon: adaptability. Where the Keth relied on rigid doctrine, humans relied on ingenuity. Where the Keth trusted overwhelming size, humans trusted cunning. The first wave of human ships did not meet them head-on. Instead, they broke apart, scattering into the asteroid field of Urian Belt. The Keth followed, their enormous hulls scraping against rock and debris. Then the trap was sprung. Hidden among the asteroids, mining stations had been converted into weapon platforms. Lasers, railguns, and torpedo bays ignited all at once, a sudden storm of fire raining upon the Dominion fleet. Human freighters, unarmed in appearance, opened their sides to reveal concealed missile racks, launching swarms of guided warheads into the Keth formation. For the first time, the mighty Dominion faltered. Elias stood steady, issuing commands like a conductor guiding a symphony of war. "Strike their engines. Do not waste on their shields. Blind them, cripple them. Make them fear the dark between stars." And so they did. The Ironheart swooped between two Keth cruisers, its smaller size allowing it to dart where the enemy could not follow. It released a burst of electronic countermeasures, scrambling the Keth systems. The Dawnfire targeted fuel lines, igniting eruptions within enemy hulls. Even converted freighters rammed into Keth destroyers, sacrificing themselves to cripple the giants. The Dominion had expected a cornered prey. Instead, they found a predator with nothing left to lose. When the smoke cleared, the impossible had happened. Of the 20 Keth ships, only 7 limped away, broken and scarred. Humanity had lost vessels too, but the price had been far less than the galaxy believed possible. The surviving Keth ships fled, broadcasting distress calls into the void. Across the stars, alien ears listened in disbelief. The whispers began. Humanity fought. Humanity won. Elias did not smile at victory. He sat in silence, staring at the tactical screen that still flickered with the red marks of ships destroyed, human and Keth alike. He whispered to himself so softly no one else could hear, "This is only the beginning." But the galaxy heard more than whispers. News spread like wildfire. The syndicates of Avar lost 3 trade convoys to human ambushes within the same week. Orion Accord outposts began reporting disappearances of patrols, their mighty fleets finding themselves harassed, outmaneuvered, undone by tactics too unpredictable to counter. The galaxy, which had once dismissed humanity as fragile, now looked upon Earth with new eyes. Not with respect, not yet, but with fear. Mira, watching reports flood into the Unified Council chambers, felt the shift. "They thought us broken," she murmured. "Now they see we are something else, something they cannot control." And in the homes of Earth, in the colonies long silenced, a new sound rose. a sound not of despair but of hope. Families lit candles for those who had fallen, but they also sang for those who still fought. Children who once learned only of peace now spoke of courage. Humanity had struck, and the stars would remember. Still, Elias knew the storm had only just begun. The Keth would not forgive humiliation. The syndicates would not accept disruption of profit. The Accord would not tolerate defiance. The galaxy would come with fire greater than ever before, and humanity would be ready. The first strike had been made. The war had truly begun. Victory had come at Urian Belt. But the galaxy did not retreat. It answered with fury of its own. The Keth Dominion returned, this time not with 20 ships, but with 100. The syndicates sent fleets to cut off Earth's trade lanes, strangling supply lines, and the Orion Accord, unwilling to openly side with tyranny yet unwilling to admit its failure, declared Earth an unstable element that must be contained for the safety of civilization. The storm humanity had summoned was now upon them. The battles that followed were not swift triumphs. They were long, grinding, merciless struggles that chewed through steel and souls alike. Every victory was bought with blood. Every survival carried scars. Humanity was proving it could endure, but endurance demanded a price. On the colony of Solace Prime, that price was carved into the Earth itself. The syndicates descended with raiders, intent on breaking morale by slaughtering civilians. Solace was not a military world. It was farmland, orchards, and small towns where children played beneath twin suns. Elias had begged for reinforcements to be sent, but fleets were stretched thin. When the syndicate fleet arrived, only a handful of militia stood to defend. For 3 days, the people of Solace fought with what they had: converted harvesters, rifles built from mining tools, barricades made of farm wagons. They held against impossible odds, long enough for evac ships to escape with thousands of children. But when the syndicates breached the final defenses, the towns burned. By the time Elias's fleet arrived, Solace Prime was ash and silence. Fields once green were scarred black, homes reduced to embers drifting in the wind. Of the militia, none remained. They had fought until there was nothing left to fight with. Elias walked among the ruins with his officers. He saw toys half buried in the dirt, letters unsent, a guitar leaning against a wall that no longer stood. His men tried not to cry, but their tears fell anyway. Mira stood beside him, her voice trembling as she whispered, "We warned them. We told them peace was the only way." Her hands shook, clutching the scorched soil. And still they chose this. Elias's reply was quiet but unyielding. "Then let Solace be remembered. Let every colony know what was taken. And let every star know why we will not yield." The death of Solace Prime did not break humanity. It steeled it. Across the colonies, volunteers poured into enlistment centers. Men and women who had never held weapons stood in lines that stretched for miles. They did not come for glory. They came because Solace had shown them what defeat meant, but grief carried its own shadows. Families mourned sons and daughters who would not return. Cities held vigils, their skies lit by lanterns floating upward like silent prayers. Children asked why the stars hated them. Parents struggled to answer. Elias bore their grief like a weight on his shoulders. Every name of the fallen was carved into his heart. Every battle won reminded him of those who had paid the cost. He never let his soldiers forget either. Before every mission he would recite names, long lists of the dead, so that the living fought not for vengeance but remembrance. Mira, too, carried the burden. She traveled from world to world, speaking at funerals and in burned-out halls. Her words were never fiery. They were quiet, aching, but strong. They thought to silence us with fear, she told a crowd in a ruined city. But fear does not silence humanity. Fear teaches us why we must keep going. The stars will learn we do not vanish. Even in ashes we rise, and so, humanity rose again and again, but the price grew heavier. The Ironheart, hero of Urion, was lost at the Battle of Kalos Rift. The Dawnfire barely limped home after being torn open by enemy fire. Convoys carrying food and medicine were destroyed. Even Earth itself felt the strain, rationing supplies, factories working day and night, families enduring the endless waiting for letters that sometimes never came. Still, through it all, One truth burned brighter than any sorrow. Humanity refused to surrender. The galaxy had thought a broken colony would shatter their spirit. Instead, Solace Prime became a rallying cry. Soldiers painted its name on their armor. Children drew it on walls. Entire fleets swore oaths upon it. The price of fury was high. Humanity paid it, and still they endured. For though grief hollowed them, something greater filled the space it left behind. Resolve. The war ground on, relentless and merciless. Humanity had endured its wounds, buried its dead, and still stood. Yet standing was not enough. Against fleets that spanned hundreds of systems, endurance alone would not bring victory. Something had to change, and it did, though not from steel or fire, but from spirit. It began quietly, on the fringe world of Corin, where the Keth kept enslaved miners. Word of Solace Prime's defiance reached the workers. They whispered it in the tunnels, in the shadows where overseers could not hear. Humans fight back. Humans endure. Humans do not break. The story spread like sparks in dry grass. One day the miners refused to pick up their tools. The overseers struck them down. The next day more miners refused. Soon the entire planet was in revolt. The Keth crushed them with brutal efficiency, but when the smoke cleared, carved on the walls of the deepest mine was a message in human letters, scratched by trembling hands that had never seen Earth. We rise, like the humans. From there the cracks spread. The Avar syndicates prided themselves on their merchants' loyalty, bought with profit. Yet when human ships raided their convoys, sparing enslaved crews and only targeting syndicate masters, whispers spread in back rooms and market stalls. Humans free those they could enslave. Humans do not kill for greed. For the first time, syndicate power wavered, not from Earth's fleets but from doubt within their own ranks. The Orion Accord, too, could not ignore what was unfolding. For decades they had debated, postponed, hidden behind bureaucracy. Now reports reached them of entire alien populations rising up, chanting human words of defiance, painting Solace Prime's name on walls. The Accord envoys, once amused, now argued with unease. Had humanity awakened something greater than fleets? Mira saw it most clearly. She had continued her journey, speaking not just to humans but to anyone who would listen. On frontier outposts, she shared stories of farmers who stood against raiders with only their plows. On shattered colonies, she told of children who carried messages through battlefields so survivors could escape. Her words were not polished diplomacy anymore, they were raw, human, and real. Humanity does not fight to rule you, she said to a gathering of alien refugees on a hidden moon. We fight because no child, human or otherwise, should live in chains. If you stand with us, you do not stand under us, you stand beside us. Something stirred in their eyes. For the first time, they believed allies began to appear. Not grand fleets, not mighty empires, but small bands. A group of alien engineers sabotaged syndicate supply depots. A band of exiled warriors from a forgotten world pledged their blades to Earth. Even a handful of Orion Accord senators broke silence, declaring that neutrality in the face of injustice was no longer neutrality, but complicity. Elias noticed it too in battle. His fleets no longer fought alone. Small ships of alien design slipped into formation, striking at the flanks of syndicate raiders. Smugglers carried supplies to starving colonies. Messages arrived from resistance groups in languages humanity barely understood, but the meaning was clear. We fight. With you it was not overwhelming support. It was not enough to end the war. But it was the beginning of something the galaxy had not seen before. Unity born not of fear, but of shared defiance. Elias stood on the bridge of the Resolve, watching as new signals appeared on his tactical displays, ships not of Earth but of allies. His officers murmured in awe. He said only one word, but it carried across the deck like thunder: hope. Yet hope did not mean the fighting ceased. Battles still raged, losses still cut deep, humanity still bled, but for the first time, humanity did not bleed alone. Mira, standing at the heart of the unified council chamber on Earth, spoke to the gathered leaders of every human nation and colony. Her voice was weary, her frame thinner than before, but her spirit burned bright. "We are no longer a small flame in the dark," she declared. "We are a fire that spreads, not to consume but to light." They thought to bury us. Instead, we have become the seed of something greater. Humanity has shown the stars that peace was not weakness, that endurance was not silence, that when forced we rise, and others are rising with us. The chamber erupted in thunderous resolve. The tide had not yet turned fully. The Keth, the syndicates, the Accord. They still wielded fleets vast and terrible. But now for the first time they faced not humanity alone. They faced humanity multiplied by every voice that had found courage in Earth's defiance. The turning point had come. And the galaxy was beginning to realize humanity's fury was not only its own. It was contagious. Would you like me to carry forward into Part 7, the last message, the final 700 words, where the war reaches its conclusion and humanity delivers a timeless warning to the stars? You said 7, ChatGPT said. Perfect. Let's conclude with Part 7. The last message, around 700 words. Here the war finds its resolution, and humanity's final words echo through the stars, not only as a warning but as a legacy. The war did not end in a single battle. No grand clash decided the fate of stars in one day. Instead, it was a tide, slow, relentless, rising higher with every struggle until even the strongest walls could not stand against it. Humanity and its allies fought world by world, station by station, carving a path not of conquest but of liberation. The Keth Dominion's fleets faltered as revolt spread across their enslaved worlds. The syndicates of Avar found their profits bleeding away, their convoys shattered, their loyalty purchased too cheaply to last. And within the Orion Accord, silence was finally broken. One by one, worlds declared that neutrality had become impossible. For the first time in recorded history, the great powers of the galaxy turned their gaze inward, not in triumph, but in fear. Commander Elias stood at the heart of that storm, his hair now streaked with gray, his face weathered by years of battle. The resolve was scarred but still flying, its name a banner across the stars. On its bridge, his officers no longer asked if they could win. They asked only how long until the enemy admitted it, and admit it they did. At the edge of the Vega system, the place where humanity's heart had first been broken, emissaries from the Keth and Avar appeared under flags of truce. They carried no arrogance now. Their words were cautious, clipped with unease. They offered talks, ceasefires, promises. Mira was there to meet them. She stood before their delegation, frail in body but unshaken in spirit. Her voice was steady as she answered, "You had peace once. You chose to break it. You had mercy once. You chose to deny it. Now you stand not because of your strength but because of humanity's patience running thin. Do not mistake our willingness to talk again for weakness. If you betray us once more, you will not have the chance to regret it." The aliens bowed their heads. For the first time, humanity was not dismissed. It was heard, and so the war slowed, then stilled. Armistice lines were drawn, not because humanity could conquer the galaxy, but because the galaxy had seen enough of what humanity could become when forced to fury. But Elias knew victory was not in treaties or borders. Victory was in memory. Humanity had to ensure the stars never forgot the path that led here. So one final message was prepared, a broadcast not of threat but of truth, a message to be etched into archives, into histories, into the conscience of the galaxy. Elias and Mira stood together one last time in the chamber on Earth where it had all begun. The technicians were ready. The signal would carry to every world, every station, every hidden corner of the stars. Mira spoke first, her words like soft flame. "To the peoples of the galaxy, we are not conquerors. We never wished to be warriors. We sought only peace, but when peace was denied, we learned to endure. When endurance was mocked, we learned to fight. And when forced to fury, we showed what humanity truly is." Elias's voice followed, deep and steady, carrying the weight of all who had fallen. "Know this. Humanity will always seek peace first. We will always open our hands before we raise our fists. But if you take that peace from us, if you leave us no choice, then understand Earth does not fade. Earth does not kneel. Earth endures." He paused, letting the silence settle across the chamber, across the galaxy itself. Then he spoke the words that would echo for centuries. We gave our final warning once. Do not make us give it again. The broadcast ended. On distant worlds, miners in tunnels lifted their heads with pride. In syndicate markets, merchants whispered with unease. In accord chambers, senators shifted in their seats, no longer certain of their place. And on Earth, in the cities rebuilt and the colonies rising from ash, humanity stood taller than ever before. The war was not forgotten. The scars remained, carved deep into soil and soul, but so too did the lesson. Humanity had entered the stars, seeking friendship. It had been answered with chains. And yet, even in fury, it had not become what it fought against. Mira, as years passed, often told young students who asked about the war, "We were never meant to be monsters. We were meant to be a mirror." We showed the stars what they had become and what they could still choose to be. And Elias, older now, his days of command behind him, would walk among memorials where the names of the fallen were carved in stone. He would place his hand on the names, close his eyes, and whisper, "You are the price of our fury. You are the reason we endure." The galaxy remembered, not only the battles, not only the fire, but the spirit that burned brighter than any weapon. And across the stars, a truth endured. Humanity's first choice will always be peace. But if peace fails, prepare for humanity's fury.